Welcome to The Other Coast, a podcast detailing the Malifaux meta in Los Angeles. My name is Jeff, and with me here is another SoCal player, Colgan, and an East Coast player, Jim.
Hey everyone.
Hey everybody.
Hey, so, hope you guys are doing well with, the current state of the universe. For this episode, as we go into the holidays, we thought we might jump on the bandwagon and do a holiday-themed episode. So today is the Other Coast's Festivus episode. Many years ago, I was asking a rules question on the forums, and another user reached for a different interpretation. And as I rained logic down on him, I thought to myself, there had to be another way. And so it's a Festivus for the rest of us. And this year's Festivus, as always, begins with the airing of grievances. I've got a lot of problems with you people, and now you're going to hear it. So, my first rant. The other side. Where's the stuff? What's taking so long? I backed Kickstarter like 19 years ago. I've suckered some other people into buying army starter sets. We saw some pictures of an app, which, we've seen nothing more. We've heard about a starter set, but again, more empty promises. Where is it? I want my army scale stuff.
I mean, I bought into it late. I guess I'm one of the people you convinced, but every time I hear about it, when I hear about it on the internet or in the store, everything just goes back to like how poorly mismanaged like the Kickstarter launch was. I think that one of the stores, they got like their like foundational or promotion pack like 2 or 3 weeks after the official launch. So I'm kind of curious too. It's like, I know they teased the 2-player starter set for like, what was it, Guild and was it Court of Two, or what was the other one?
That was it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, because those are the two not main factions, but what's it called?
The emissaries, I think.
Yeah, the Envoys.
Envoys. There we go.
Envoys, yeah.
Although your only option were just individual champions, because they didn't have any units in the. I shouldn't have used past tense. They don't have any units in the game. So
You're already damning yourself.
What about you, Jim? Did you at any point jump on the other side? Or
Admittedly, I didn't. I had an army scale game that I had invested money and time into, and I wasn't prepared to do so again. And I mean, I've heard nothing but good things about the game as far as mechanics and how it plays, but it's also like a new game, right?
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, the range of options per faction is fairly limited. And from what I was reading on the forums, you have some variety and flexibility in how you build your armies, but it seems like there's less flexibility than others because you only have the core set of models. I think it's perfectly valid to express frustration with the rollout because it definitely seems to have stumbled a bit, but at the same time, I am going to be that guy and say 3rd edition Malifaux kind of screwed the pooch here. It being spoiled took all the attention away from the other side at like the worst possible time. That doesn't make up for the fact that there was the issues with rollout and with getting product to stores and all that, but yeah, the interest side of things, poor other side didn't have as much of a chance and probably deserves a little more patience.
Sure, that's fair. I in its defense, I should say that there actually are kind of a decent number of options. I think each faction probably is pushing double digits, maybe if they're not over, they're pretty close. Now, of course, some of these options are, pretty bad, so maybe in a realistic sense they're not options. But I do think you can make pretty interesting forces, and the framework of a game is there, and maybe that's kind of what's fueling my frustration, because it's not just army scale Malifaux, it is its own beast. It is interesting for different reasons, and so I guess I've enjoyed my experiences for the most part, and that's just making me kind of frustrated that I can't do more. But next, why doesn't Through the Breach use opposed flips? So Through the Breach, for those of you who don't know, is the role-playing game set in the Malifaux universe. It's for the most part well-written. It's an entertaining game. It's got some interesting concepts, but the resolution system is terrible. And you might think that they just used Malifaux for resolution system, and you would be wrong. And that would have been really smart of them. And it was actually an optional rule in first edition, which they cut out in second edition for no clear reason. Or, well, I guess I shouldn't really call it second edition because I don't know if they officially call the new core rulebook a new edition, but it essentially is. And the edition that they have instead is just single opposed flips. It's incredibly mechanical. It's incredibly easy to game. The math on it is stupid. Integrating groups of people who want to be good at different things, which is very common in the kind of game that Through the Breach is, just does not work very well at all. And you can go on the forums and read about it. And basically, those of us who feel like it should just be a root opposed flip system have mountains of well-founded reasons for it. And the few people who disagree are like, well, that's just not in the book. And then when you point out it used to be in the book, there's just silence. So, because I've been through this argument several times, and I have a user specifically in mind who will continue to say, well, it wasn't written with that in mind, and when I point out, well, it was an official optional rule, crickets. So that's my rant about Through the Breach, which just should be a phenomenal game, but its terrible system is holding it back.
So very tangentially, since I don't have a lot of knowledge of the Through the Breach itself, but how many internet enemies do you have at this point?
Well, enemies would imply that they are of such a stature that they can provide opposition. So none.
Wow. And now that we have lost tens of listeners, so I'm gonna push back a little bit here, not from a place of knowledge, because I don't have knowledge about the game, but that's not really stopped me before.
You're on the exact same level as all the people on the forums who disagree with me.
So, but real talk, as an RPG, because Through the Breach is an RPG, isn't there a rule 0 somewhere that says that as the Fate Master, you can see fit to play things differently in your game, and if you, as the Fate Master, want to say, you know what, let's add that opposed flip back in, and you do it. Yeah, sure, official rule book doesn't currently have it, but official 5th edition D&D rules don't have a critical fumble on a roll of a natural 1, but I have been in many groups that have a house rule. So yeah, it's frustrating, but why don't you just house rule it?
But this is an excellent question, and here's the answer. So first of all, because future materials are still written from the point of view of the terrible system. So even if you do house rule it for yourself, it's still just a little bit of extra work that you have to do, and running these games and playing these games already takes a bunch of work. But actually, although you might think there is a rule 0, and I don't have the books memorized, so maybe there is, Through the Breach is perhaps the most arrogantly written RPG I've ever seen. In the GM book, it explicitly says that the GM is not allowed to fudge results, like, for instance, to save a character from dying, because, and it says, that is cheating, and you're just not allowed to do it. And so it's actually telling you how you have to run your own game, which obviously there are no RPG police, so they're not going to break down your door, but just, the sheer conceit of believing as a developer that you have the right to tell other people how they should be playing the game is pretty offensive to me. We use opposed flips in our home game, and it's massively better. For those of you who play Through the Breach, I very much recommend you do it, because a whole bunch of the issues you see on the forums, oh, well, how do I make combat challenging for the characters who start out as having a 6, having their best combat rating? How do I challenge them in combat? Well, you make it opposed flips. How do I make it so that groups who aren't all good at the same thing, but who are trying to do the same thing, can all contribute? You do opposed flips. How can I do it so that, the results aren't so predictable? You do opposed flips. Read the threads about opposed flips. It's very clear that it's the best option. All right. Next grievance, because I got a bunch of these, if you can't tell. Next grievance, why are Fate decks so badly made? Some of them don't have damage and accuracy modifiers, like the Through the Breach Kickstarter deck didn't have it, even though that game uses them. The other side doesn't have them, and now the other side doesn't, but on the deck packaging it says you can use them for Malifaux, and Malifaux has these. Some decks that I thought didn't have them, actually people pointed out a few of them do, like the classic deck, but they're ridiculously subtle. If you're not told, you probably don't notice. So I don't understand why every deck doesn't have clear damage/accuracy modifier. I also don't get why, with the new faction decks, which are fantastic in the main, don't have color-coded suits. How hard would it have been to make the tome blue, or the word tomes blue, or even like the little colored strip that matches the faction that separates the art from the suit? Why don't they just make that strip color code? They could have color coded it many different ways and made it easier at a glance. And yeah, it's not a big deal. Experienced players are going to know it. It's not that hard to tell a crow from a tome or whatever. But it's just another thing that would have made the deck easier to use. And while we're on that, why do model cards still use X for crows, whereas that symbol doesn't appear on a Fate deck that Weird has made for years? Like maybe all the way back to first edition, or maybe the iconic Fate deck used the X's. I can't recall, but now it's a bird on the Fate decks, and it's an X on the models. And when you're trying to teach new players, that's just another little thing. And again, none of these things are huge, but why wouldn't you just smooth out the edges when it costs you nothing to do it? And then finally, why doesn't Weird reprint Fate decks? Everyone who doesn't own a retro Fate deck wants a retro Fate deck. That's why, like, on eBay, they're huge. I only use the retro Fate deck that I have because I have a backup, and I'm terrified of, like, splitting one of the cards accidentally, even though they are plastic. It can happen. So if I didn't have that backup, I wouldn't use it. So, the iconic Fate deck, people love that. Why don't they just reprint them? That's my grievance.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. It'd be nice to have, like, more options for the Fate decks. There's like so many out there, and it seems like everyone that you want is no longer in print, and you just have to go to eBay and just pay like $100 or $200 for like a poker deck, which feels real bad.
Okay, couple things, guys. We're gonna slow our roll here.
Stop the Jeff train.
All right, I think some of our listeners are probably having some blood pressure issues because of all the sodium that we're pouring out right now. So first off, I do agree that with the advent of Wargame Vault and print on demand, having access to classic style decks or beloved decks from yesteryear would be a snap decision to be able to say, yes, I would like to purchase those and print them and ship them to me. It doesn't force Weird to have like a backlog of them. And I don't know what the requirement is, but it's as easy as providing the assets, right? But I remember thing was the second edition rulebook was like, you can play with a regular set of cards to play with Malifaux. And you know what a regular set of poker cards doesn't have? Damage accuracy indicators. Is that something implemented that is a quality of life improvement? Yes. But is it that hard to memorize? A 1 to 5 is a weak, a 6 to 10 is a moderate, and a 11 plus is severe? Come on, guys. The X for the Crow, that's actually a really good point, and I hadn't considered it. Yeah, they do look, obviously it looks like a spade, because that's the suit it replaces. And on a card, it looks like an X. And I know there was actually some confusion with people I was talking to about EVS, because of how Maxine uses the actual X symbol for her polymath and all of her triggers and stuff. So that's actually a really neat idea, if only they hadn't already probably patented the symbols and use them in their various fonts. And now they would have to like redesign the crow, and if they're redesigning the crow, why not redesign all of them at the same time? You know what I mean?
Yeah, although I think you mean trademark, because you actually cannot patent a symbol.
That's what I mean, yes.
So my last grievance, I have plenty more, but the last grievance I'm going to consume airtime with is inconsistent rules text. And just the fact that Weird doesn't use unified language for things like timing, the fact that Weird rolls out erratas with too long of a delay between them, that they pick resolutions that, like the famous Another, that are one, bizarre, but two, as I said on, I think, Third Floor Wars, makes it very difficult to then, by analogy, resolve similar issues. And things like, why does falling damage count as having come from the model that caused the effect that made the fall, but hazardous doesn't? Just like these little itty-bitty things that are just not consistent at all. And then sometimes a clarification, they've sent rules clarifications in private message format. I remember I was trying to determine whether after the end of activation and at the end of activation mean the same thing. There's no reason why they should, because by English, by grammar, they identify different time periods. But in a private message to just another user, Weird established that, in fact, that is what they mean. And that user was kind enough to post the private message that he'd gotten months ago. So it's not like the developers got sick of me and came in to punk me. Although, after this podcast, I wouldn't be surprised. Assuming they even listen to these podcasts. But, that's no way to issue a ruling. Like, what, just this one person has it and everyone else has to live in ignorance? So, Weird should really be a lot more professional in terms of how it does these rules, both in the initial drafting and in subsequent clarifications.
So does this mean if I can just Photoshop a private message from one of the devs, I can just kind of do whatever I want?
No.
I mean, at this point, given their fractious, the absolute disconnect to rational thinking some of their rulings has shown would make it so that I would pretty much have to accept whatever you had Photoshop. Whereas if they used a consistent resolution method, I would at least be able to tell when something is just completely irrational. So those are my grievances for this Festivus. What about you, Colgan? Do you have any grievances?
Oh man, I'm not sure if I can match the passion. I have a few, but I think the biggest one, and one I've been holding on for a while. So we can talk about the Explorer Society playtesting now, right?
Not specific, not the
not
details.
Specifics, but the general things. Yeah.
Sure.
So I remember going into it, one of the things I always had an issue with was just the EVS keyword ability, the rapid reconfiguration. And it wasn't so much that I was like, oh, this is overpowered. It just seemed like such an unfun mechanic that had absolutely no counterplay to it. So it's just like, hey, now suddenly my deck is just better than yours. You see this one? It is actually a 9. You get rid of all the weak cards in your hand. And then, especially against the leader, when you flip against them, your opponent has a 25% chance that their card is just trash. And there's nothing they can really do about it. It's just well, maybe you should have flipped a better card. If you have a high card in your hand, if it's the wrong suit, it's still shit. You suck at this game. And then the whole time, the enemy crew is just turning these 1s into 9s or redrawing from the bottom of the pile. And it just feels really bad. I think probably a similar skill is Rig the Deck from Lynch. But that doesn't feel quite as bad to me. I guess it's similar to, what is it? Intuition? Is that the right skill?
Mm-hmm.
Ability?
Mm-hmm.
Where you can look at the top 3, but then as you start attacking the hands, you get less and less options. And in a sense, it is a roundabout way of just cheating in cards from your hand to get better flips than you normally would. Sure, you can plan out your actions a little bit better, but it's not actively increasing the quality of your deck or actively decreasing the quality of your opponent's deck.
Yeah, I'm sure it's completely coincidental that you find Lynch's ability fine and you also play Lynch.
Yeah, completely coincidental. Thank you for pointing that out, Jeff.
Well, I'm just going to say that I know what Explorer's keyword I'm asking Santa for.
Just to be clear, it's not I feel the ability is overpowered. I just feel it's such a lame mechanic and it's just completely unfun.
So you are aware that reconfigure only works on cheated cards, right? Not flipped cards.
Yes.
And everyone has their own suit, right? So you're not sitting here with a handful of, I have a 1 of every suit, so one time this model can cheat and have a moderate result. That, yes, technically your deck becomes better. To put it this way, put it another way, if you say Maxine is so good because you have a 25% chance to flip a Dookie card against her, then every other model in EVS has a 75% chance to have Rapid V configuration do nothing because they don't have the card that they want to cheat. I did not playtest EVS during any beta. I have played it exactly once in a pickup game, and in that game, Maxine died turn 2. I was nearly tabled by turn 4. Maybe I'm just bad at the game or bad at EVS, but I hardly think it's an unfun mechanic. My personal experience outweighs your personal experience, sir. Jeff has established that this is the way.
Yes. So I guess Jim has conclusively put that issue to bed. Colgan, do you have another ineffectual grievance?
Wait, why is mine ineffectual now? I'm taking this to the forums. We're gonna have the real fight there. I mean, I guess we touched on this a little bit too, but it's just like sometimes looking at some models, it's weird to see how like the balance shook out, like how some models are like, oh, this is perfectly fine for the cost, and other things are just so off the chart. I mean, I think we're talking about the Ashigaru. There's just like such an imbalance between certain things, like the Ashigaru being a 5-cost minion with like a 2-inch reach, armor, hard to kill, like self heal built in, and then you have like other 5-cost models that are nowhere near as like tough or aggressive. There's even like 6-point models that I think probably aren't in like the same level as the Ashigaru.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, because what you're saying is the Ashigaru is ludicrous, and you know what? You are 100% right. The Ashigaru has no business being as efficient as it is for its cost. And you know what? Most of the time, I don't see people hiring them. You know what they do? They spend a few more points, they hire Toshiro, and then they summon it in the middle of your face, and it doesn't matter that it was summoned, slow, because as soon as Toshiro's done his activation, it's fast now, and focused, and fully healed, and in position to deny you having anything to do with that part of the board. Unless you, spend the time to try and chew through a hard-to-kill armor, hard-to-wound. Is he hard to kill?
Yes.
He's hard to kill.
Oh, yes.
He's not hard to wound. He's hard to kill, but he has extended reach.
He is unnecessarily difficult to chew through for his wound cost. And you do chew through it, and what do you get at the end of the day? Another corpse that becomes another Ashigaru. Great.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's definitely some models in the 5-6 stone range that are problematic. And what they really do, I think, also is clarify the uselessness of a lot of the 4-stone models that exist in the game, like the Mole Man and the Desperate Mercenary.
Hey, Mole Man is OP. Okay? Just hire 30 Mole Men. You can't lose.
Yeah, we're still waiting to do Colgan's 20 Mole Man game. All right. So Colgan's grievances were presented pretty much exactly as you would expect from a polite card-playing digital dog. Jim, I'm hoping you can do a better job of representing the Festivus spirit. Let's hear a grievance.
Okay, look, I want to just take a moment and say thank you to Weird and the Weird community for putting out a wonderful game. Every player that I play in Malifaux is reasonable, is level-headed, and then the question comes up, how do we resolve these multiple things that all happen around the same time? And then I start tearing my hair out. When can we please have some kind of structured, nested resolution that's not just, oh, active player chooses how it resolves? It gets bananas. Like, at the end of the turn, technically, my opponent can tell me, oh, you score a scheme that will cost you that marker, but if you had initiative, then you could choose it in the other way and score 2 points. That boggles my mind. You have good old-fashioned Scamper, Terrifying, or Terrifying with Take the Hit. Terrifying with Take the Hit on a model that is also terrifying. I don't know how many of these that could just simply be resolved by saying, all right, here is the order of operations. And we do have a detailed timing chart, and it is very good. And 95% of the time, you can work out with your opponent what the resolution is. Look at something like, say, Magic the Gathering, which has a ridiculously robust timing sequence. I think that there's something that we could take away from that to make these few arguments that do exist make a little, smooth them out, really. Just make a little more sense. Do you know what I mean? Or am I just talking into the wind here?
I was expecting Jeff to emphatically to agree, but maybe he's busy, like, typing up his rant for the forums right now. This seems like right up his alley. But, I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any reason that you shouldn't just kind of have these written down by now. I mean, we already had that huge FAQ, but they couldn't go through and, like, list out exactly what it should be. And I feel like from the conversations I've seen, there is an idea of what the resolution should be. It's just never been, like, codified.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you. This is kind of like the grievance of grievances, I think, as far as Malifaux is concerned. And look, you mentioned Magic the Gathering, and I think, and I've said this on the forums or on a weird place, I think Magic is a great analogy. Because if you buy a Magic starter, you get like, whatever, 20, 40 cards, however many it is that come in starters nowadays. And you also get a couple of cards with the rules on them. And those rules cards teach you enough about the game to play. But if you actually go to the WotC website and download the official Magic rules, they're like 150 or 200 pages long. And the reason is because those little rules cards you get are good enough for the vast majority of cases. But when you actually really need to work something out, you need to know specifically what is going on. And Malifaux is a game with interactions that are probably just as complicated as Magic in terms of the mechanics, and then you're adding in the three-dimensional space in which it's happening. So yeah, I think Weird's rulebook, when you actually subtract everything else, I think there's maybe like 20, 25 pages of rules, because a bunch of it is the schemes and stuff like that. The rulebook does a very serviceable job for the vast majority of cases, but there is really no excuse for not having an actual detailed sequence of official resolution.
I am glad that we could come to a reasonable agreement about it. Now, to speak of something that's unreasonable and you cannot convince me otherwise, why in God's green earth can the mechanical rider reactivate anyone, regardless of range, line of sight, good taste, or anything, with their 5 trigger on their bonus action? And why? Why is that a thing?
Clearly because the Arcanists need the help.
Also, it's a rider. Rider's supposed to be cool and flashy, yeah? You gotta have that, like, nice, super... You need to have that, like, power payoff.
Is it so hard to say, reactivate a model within range? A model that can move a bajillion inches a turn and say, you, friend, I inspire you. Not, oh, I inspire myself to go 28 inches in a turn, drop 2 markers, clean your house, do your taxes. I do it all.
Yeah, and if it's the duet, it'll do it again.
Thanks. I had forgotten that. I had one last little bit of happiness left this season. Thank you for extinguishing it. Ah.
But now I'm kind of curious, what does, like, the mechanical rider do to, like, get these people motivated enough to, like, take more actions? Is everyone just kind of lazy and the mechanical rider is just kind of, like, prodding them? It's like, hey, do it again.
See, that would imply range or line of sight. But no, it's just, they're just sitting there and all of a sudden they go, you know what? I should just be able to move faster than is humanly possible for no reason, except someone far over there on a horse went, herp-a-derp-a-derp, or something. I don't know.
It sounds like Jim may have been,
No. Look, riders are supposed to be...
Were you ridden over by a mechanical rider?
No. But here's the thing. Riders are supposed to be a super powerful model. They're a 10 to 11 cost model. They're a centerpiece model. They're large to build. They're fantastically detailed to paint. And they typically work with every crew in a faction. I have no problem with them being good. Like, this is a minis game, and you should play minis that can do things. Your minis are allowed to do things on the table. You shouldn't just have minis that are like, oh, it can't do anything good, because if it does something good, then it's broken. No. This isn't this is its role, it's broken. This thing fundamentally breaks several design elements of Malifaux as I understand them. And I could be wrong. Listeners, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm wrong and help me sleep at night. You have a trigger on an action that doesn't target models, that is supposed to be putting out tokens that affects a model without targeting it, without range, without line of sight, without things that the game is built around having range and line of sight and defining terrain. Why do we spend the time defining terrain for a model that ignores a lot of it when moving and, for its most powerful effect, just doesn't care about terrain, about placement, about any of it? The fact that it doesn't care about so much of the rules seems weird to me, and not in the funny haha way, but in the something was missed way. And it's a powerful effect too. Like, if it was a friendly model within range gains, I don't know, built-in tomes on all their duels for the turn, or like all models within range get to draw a card. Like, okay, that's powerful. That draws cards. It's synergistic with other things that the card already does. But this is just like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to stop there.
I think I agree with you in that I feel if it did have a range limitation, if it had to affect something that was within 6, the range of the action. First of all, a 6-inch pulse on a 50mm model is already a lot, so I'm not sure that, or, in many instances, I think players will be able to duplicate the results that they want anyways. And I think probably unrestricted actions of this kind are not good for the game. So, yeah, I will subscribe to your grievance. Colgan, what do you think?
Sorry, I just kept thinking about how the mechanical rider actually does this. Yeah, I guess I don't really feel super strong either way.
As expected.
I'm just here playing my, what was it, cribbage?
Cribbage. Okay, well, so with my endorsement and Colgan's ambivalence, yeah, I guess that's another one for Jim. Jim's on a roll. Do you have any other grievances, Jim?
We touched on it earlier. I just can we please clarify another? We've defined another, and my understanding of how another is defined is confusing to me, and it's confusing because it happens in many games. I have to have a conversation with my opponent about how do you understand the ruling on another. I shouldn't have to have a conversation with my opponent every game about the meaning of a common English word that has a very intuitive meaning, but as we have learned, you can't just take the intuitive meaning of the word. So why is that relevant? I happen to enjoy playing Bayou a time or two, and Bayou have these little guys called good old boys in Sommer's Keyword, and they are fantastic models. They are really strong at pretty much everything you want them to do. They're a good all-purpose minion, but they have this thing called Ricochet on their gun. Ricochet is a trigger on a mask, and it lets you do a damage flip on a target and another target within 3 inches of the model you're shooting. Now, my understanding is at this point it has been sussed out that you cannot shoot a model and then ricochet into the same model.
No, you can. And this is why their ruling was terrible. They wanted to stealth nerf Nekima, but instead of just making an explicit change, they tried to mangle the way another worked. So another refers to not the model that the text is written on. So you can't ricochet onto the good old boy, but you can ricochet onto the original target.
Why? Why? That's all. I am feeling suitably salty, as Nathan over on the Salt Mine would say. This is my salt of the month. Shout out Nathan if you're listening. I don't know, guys. I feel like we've had a fair bit of grievances, but isn't there another part of Festivus?
Yes, indeed. We now come to the Feats of Strength. Festivus is not over until we've been pinned. So, I guess I'll head off. We were thinking for the Feats of Strength we would do kind of like a trivia, like pub quiz type thing. So what's going to happen is we're going to take turns asking questions. We will then indicate an opportunity for people to pause if they would like to pause the recording and try to work out the answer themselves, in which case they can restart it, and then we'll talk about it. So, I'll start. I know Jim is quite strong on lore, but I know he doesn't really play Through the Breach. Mm-hmm. So, in an attempt to challenge him, I have reached into a Through the Breach adventure to find a lore question. Although this is also, Colgan also is free to flail about at this.
Ouch.
So, here's the question. Who stole Sue's guitar in Contract Town number 77? And if you would like to pause the recording, please do so now. What do you guys think?
So, since I know nothing about this, I'm just going to go with the safe guess and say it's a doppelganger. And then whoever you say, I'll just say it's a doppelganger of that person.
Ooh, I like that plan. I am going to go ahead and say it was Parker Barrows, because I think that is probably how Sue started hanging out with Parker.
Okay, you guys are both wrong. Now I'll give you a hint. It's an adventure about the Crossroads 7.
Oh, was it Pride?
Colgan, do you want to take a guess?
Who else uses a guitar in the Crossroads 7?
About half of them.
Greed.
Oh, yeah.
Pride and Greed use guitars.
Sloth is drums?
Sloth also uses a guitar.
He's a bass.
So, let's see. Were you leading me to Greed, then? I guess I'll just go with Greed to split my answer with Jim.
It is Envy, because he is envious of the guitar.
Okay. Fair. Touche.
Womp womp.
Touche. Also, now I kind of want to see Envy with a guitar on top of his little mecha.
His mecha piano.
Yes.
It's an organ, I think.
It's whatever you want it to be.
Hey, I just played 3 rounds of the CR7 in the December's Feast. I took my lumps.
You chose to do
I
that.
need to believe it's an organ.
That's on you. Okay, so you got me in the lore. Well played. So I'll softball you. All right. Here's a softball. Who's the current head of the Explorer Society? And if you want to play along at home, go ahead and pause the recording. Okay, guys. What do you say?
Colgan, you want to take the layup?
It's Lord Cooper, right? Unless
Yeah, I think it is.
did I just miss it? Did I just trip and fall?
Wrong, you fools! You both said Cooper. You're both wrong. The answer is Gretchen Janus. Cooper was the founder of the Explorer Society, but after he got Slate Ridge mauled, he decided that someone else should do it. Gretchen Janus is a character that we only have seen in the lore, and you need to read the lore of the Explorer Society faction book to learn a little bit more about her. She has a lot of very interesting plans in motion, and that's all I will say on that. And I'm going to... Okay, this is a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want spoilers, skip ahead about 30 seconds. It is strongly implied that she has Kaladi's body in her possession. Neverborn Explorer's cross-faction master when?
So Lucius just took the head and then left the body, and then the explorers came by and found the body and decided to take that?
Or they took it from wherever Lucius put it.
I thought it got made into a chair.
That was a meme.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I don't really know that much about the lore. All right, well, you got us, Jim. Good job. Currently, the group is 0 for 2 on lore. Colgan, you got a lore feat of strength?
I am definitely the weakest in lore. I don't really have this depth of knowledge that you guys have built up. I'm just here to be an observer.
Okay. Well, in that case, Jeff, I'll double dip. Tell me, guys. We've been in COVID for a little while now, quarantine, and we're all kind of bored out of our gourd. So, how many models has everybody painted this year?
247.
Please name them all.
Well, once you've painted that many, like, they all just kind of blur into one.
So you have one squad of Imperial Guard?
I've painted one Sister of Battle, and I have slightly painted the Drowned that's in the overalls.
Okay.
That is the extent of my painting in 2020. But I did buy an airbrush and a compressor. Oh, wait. I painted one Necromunda column. There we go.
Wait, didn't she... Oh, no, the shed was last year, wasn't it? Or was it this year?
The shed's not even done. But...
Oh, lordy. Well, I mean, I will admit... I think I've been surprisingly productive this year. I think this year was the year I painted I think I did my Reva crew this year, and I think I did my Nicodem crew this year.
Wow, nice.
I think I did a Victoria's crew. I had them, I built them, painted them, I played with them in 2nd edition. I sold them at the start of 3rd, and then bought the new one because the new one sculpts are infinitely superior. Fight me. And I think I painted... Oh yeah, I painted a bunch of Bayou stuff. Especially a lot of Sommer stuff. So it's actually been pretty successful this year for painting for me. What about you, Colgan?
Yeah, like thinking back, I've actually painted a decent amount. So let's see. Kaladi? Was Kaladi this year? Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Kaladi was this year.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God, it feels so long ago. So, let's see. So, I painted Kaladi this year. I also painted up Rasputina. Painted up Lynch. I'm working through Asami right now. I also did some I did like Lords of Cthulhu for Monster Apocalypse. I did like 1.5k of Dark Eldar for 40k. I got a Blood Bowl team of Dark Elves.
I'm noticing a theme.
Let's see, what else did I get? I think I painted some K47 stuff. Maybe like one squad for K47.
That died fast.
I think we're going to do like a slow growth league, like maybe a month before the pandemic shut everything down, and it was just like gone after that.
It's just really slow growth.
Real slow growth.
All right, well, yeah, I clearly lose that one. And you guys are both pretty productive, and I just hate painting, and will never, ever, ever do it. Okay, I'm going to reach into our rules category. So here's a rules question for you guys. So assume Ophelia, who is size 1, is standing immediately behind, relative to her target, a height 1 blocking climbable wall. She would like to shoot her target, which is the brutal emissary, who is size 4 and 11 inches away in the open, but standing on a height 2 pillar. Can Ophelia target the brutal emissary? And for those of you following, if you'd like to pause recording now, go ahead. Otherwise, what do you guys think? Can she target the brutal emissary?
Is custom firearm 12-inch range?
It is.
Okay.
I will wait for Colgan to answer. Because I recently played against Ophelia in December's Feast, and I think I had a scenario similar to this come up.
I think she can't, because when you take the pillar into account, God, forgetting the exact rules, you like subtract it from the range, so she'd be effective range 10 at that point. But then you list all the sizes, so I feel like I'm super simplifying the issue. But I will just go for no, she can't target.
Because of range?
Yeah, because of range.
No. Nope.
What do you say, Jim?
I'm going to say no, because she is fully in the shadow of the height 1 blocking climbable wall.
That is correct. So she actually is in range, because you would subtract Ophelia's size from the height of the terrain. So that would be 1 inch added to the 11. So that's 12 inches. So she is in range. But as Jim has indicated, she cannot see over the wall. And since he's in its shadow and all of her sight lines cross it, they are all blocked.
I thought it said you ignored that. You ignored terrain for the purposes of... Or you ignored that rule for the purposes of terrain. Am I wrong?
No, the rule you ignore is the rule that allows you to see over terrain that's smaller than either the target or the attacker. So if it weren't for that rule, if it weren't for the fact that Ophelia was in the shadow of the blocking terrain, like if she were 2 inches back behind the wall, she could then see the brutal emissary because the brutal emissary is taller than the wall. But because she's in the wall's shadow, any of her sight lines that cross the wall are blocked, regardless of her target's height.
Right, okay.
Why that is seems odd because, just from a mental image, a bunch of guns, I was going to say gunsmen, but Ophelia's not a gunman. Gun people standing behind a wall, shooting at things charging them is pretty much, like every Western ever made. So it's kind of a quirk of the rules.
Yeah, it's bananas. Something that really shouldn't be. But at the same time, it allows you to hide from those models that would otherwise be able to get you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it really should be some kind of elective choice for the model within the shadow, right? Because I think it represents them trying to, basically ducking behind it and hiding. I mean, that's the whole idea of the shadow, right? Just that there's these areas that you can kind of just sneak into a crevice. But if you're in that area, you should be able to take maximum advantage of it. It shouldn't be disadvantageous sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, practically, there's also an element of you put yourself there in gameplay standpoint. Like if you're playing Ophelia and you end up at a wall and you don't move out of the shadow, that's on you. That might be unfair, but that is what it is. Now, that's a really good quiz, but both Colgan and I got it for different reasons. So what else do you have for us?
Sure. Ma Tucket attacks a silent one with her big wooden spoon, reducing it to 1 HP and getting the knock aside trigger. The silent one was standing in a pit trap, so it moves through it while being pushed off a height 2 column. Who counts as having killed the silent one, Ma or nobody? Because the silent one falls off the column, so it takes 1 point from falling and 1 point from the pit damage. How is that damage resolved? If the damage comes from the hazardous, no one will have counted as killed it. But if the damage comes from the falling, Ma will get the credit. So who gets the credit?
I think the credit goes to the Arcanist player who left the silent one in a pit trap with a Ma Tucket nearby. Clearly, it was up to them to have the model killed.
So that's what we call a cop-out in the quiz industry.
If there's multiple effects affecting the model, then it's the player.
Whose turn is it?
Well, it's Ma Tucket's turn.
Player turn, right?
Yes.
Because they just hit it and declare
that's
the knock
right.
aside trigger.
Never mind.
So then, oh no, it should die from the hazardous, right? Because hazardous happens at the end of the action, and the triggers occur after the action.
Well, so knock aside is a trigger, so the movement's coming from a trigger.
Oh yeah, that's right. Right. So they push through, and then I think in this case, well, I'm sure there's a solid answer, but I thought in this case, then you decide which order they resolve, or this is where we need the nested resolution thing.
So is that your final answer, that they're simultaneous effects, and so they're resolved under the simultaneous effects rules?
I think they happen at the same time. But then in that case, I guess you decide, but I feel like that there has to be a solid thing for just how you worded it. So I'm going to go with that it's Ma that kills them, because I think maybe the damage from falling happens before the resolution of the hazardous damage, because I recall the hazardous damage has to occur at the end of an action.
That is correct. So the falling damage happens immediately. The rules under for falling just say that the model falls, it takes damage and continues its move, if there is still move to continue. So you take the falling damage when you fall, and the hazardous you take after the end of the action, or in this case the trigger, because the action, the big one spoon, didn't move, but the trigger did move. So it would be after you resolve the trigger, by which time the model is already dead, so there's no damage to take. So good job, Colgan.
I got one.
Okay, I have one more, and then if you guys have any, feel free. But my last one is Sonia is standing 1 inch inside a building near the doorway. The Pale Rider is within 2 inches of her and has line of sight of her, and would like to target Sonia with Ride With Me and take her with him. Can he do it?
I want to say yes, but I feel like just because you asked this question, the answer has to be no, for some convoluted rules reason.
So I have a qualifying question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Is the building enclosed?
Yes, it would use the advanced building rules.
Then no, he cannot. Because the advanced building rules specify you cannot place into or place out of an enclosed building.
That's correct. In fact, the advanced building rules are even wonkier than that, because they say if any part of your base is inside, the whole model is inside. So if Sonia just has like a little bit of her base inside, you can't ride with her out of it.
What are the rules for determining whether something is enclosed or not, or is that really just up to like before the game, like this is an enclosed building?
Yeah, it's terrain definition. Generally, I think though the assumption is if you can go inside the building, and that's distinct from like the roof. So in Vassal, a lot of times I think no one plays with the roofs, or I've never played a Vassal game where someone played with the roof or treated buildings as having two different levels. So I don't know what the assumption would be in a Vassal game, but I feel like you would not be able to place within those enclosed buildings in Vassal. What about you, Jim? You play a lot of Vassal, so what is the assumption in your experience?
Yes, I have played several games where you use roofs, and yes, you use the advanced building rules, and you use the cannot place within. Now, you have to double check, because the way Vassal works is it has like 3 different layers for height, and if you don't check them, you might not even realize that you're in that there's a building on the board that has a roof, versus like a 40k style ruin where it's just walls and the roof caved in. Typically, if it's enclosed, you will play it with the advanced building rules. And I have done this, and I've done this in real life too, and it has always bitten me because I keep forgetting. And I'll do things like, haha, I will diving charge into you, ignoring intervening models and terrain. And then someone says, but there's a roof on the building, you can't do that. And I go, curses, foiled again by basic architecture.
Now, what you can do, amusingly, is you can put the pigapult in it, and a pig you want to hurl outside but close enough. And somehow the pig does manage to fly all the way through the roof. Somehow it becomes intangible during the process. So maybe it just breaks through the roof, I don't know. But when you said you play these Vassal games...
bioengineering. Yeah,
bioengineering. Have you ever played a Vassal game where models were both on the roof and inside? You know, on the same time? Like, have you ever used those? Oh, you have? Okay. I've never actually seen that. Is it, you know, from practicality standpoint, has it been pretty easy to resolve, or is it kind of more confusing than it's worth?
Generally easy enough to resolve, because in those instances you will say things, I have found saying things like, my model's on top of the roof, and then those models invariably have flight, and they fly off the roof, and then they don't go back onto any roofs. And they start there so that they can be in the deployment zone and not in a building, because the building can't fit them, because they're 50 mil bases and the buildings have 40 mil doors. My experience has been it's no advantage to get onto higher elevation, because higher elevation doesn't really benefit you in any way that being on the ground level doesn't also help you.
The resolution
Which
of
Colgan.
Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something?
You were about to say something, so I was asking you to say something.
I was just thinking the resolution of this rule just seems so weird in practice, because like with diving charge, it's like, oh, I can go through this mountain, but this like building with windows and doors, like, oh, I don't know what's in there. It's too scary. Like, I can't risk it.
Yeah, well, hey, you know, it's Malifaux. It just you wouldn't just walk through a portal in Malifaux without knowing where it goes. That would just be bad.
But like 4 inches of solid rock, like, we're good.
Well, yeah, it's like the Kool-Aid Man at that point.
I mean, the funniest thing is you could be like let's say you take Misaki, right? And she's on one side of a building on the corner. She can charge through the building onto the other side of the corner outside the building. Easy peasy, and kill something. If that something just tows itself into the doorway, like hides in the door jamb, oh no, I cannot do this. Ah. It's very silly.
Yeah, I feel like the building rules and elevation rules have always been kind of a hard thing for Malifaux to nail down.
Yeah, and that's fair. It's consistently been something since 2nd edition that I can remember. And I think part of that is, like, I can't tell you the last time in real space I've played a game with an enclosed building. Because most of my stores have 40k style ruins, trees, or fully enclosed buildings you can't actually go into, like little tiny dollhouse houses.
Sure.
I think the only thing we have is like the train station, but then the roof you can't even be placed on top of, so I guess it doesn't really even count for that.
There's a number of other buildings, like for instance the Japanese themed buildings. You can actually take the roofs off. Is that plural of roofs or roofs? I actually
for the purposes of this podcast, yes.
I think in a lot of cases it's kind of more trouble than it's worth, because many building interiors just aren't that interesting. So it's just another hollow space, and it tends to be something that it's either not impactful at all, like Jim has mentioned, you know, usually doesn't really matter, or I could see if it has an impact, it has kind of an outsized impact that no one really expected when they set up the terrain.
One of the best things you can do if you want to really muck with people is use the 40k style Zone Mortalis boards, where it's like on the interior of a spaceship, and make it like the Malifaux sewers, and the entire area is enclosed space because you're all in the sewers. Oh, you have a Silurid. It'd be a shame if you couldn't leap.
That's one way to nerf leap. I mean, I know a lot of people hate those place effects. So
just make it useless.
Yeah, exactly. If you're the person who builds your boards for your meta and you hate place effects, Jim has told you what to do.
Was that what you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
sell us on like those nice one, like the nice setups we saw online where they're like inside a library fighting it out?
No. No, that was a good one. Hey, I've got some achievements to ask you guys about
All right.
because we're having fun here, but we also do play, and I think we can take some pride in our play of Foe because some of us have like done some pretty phenomenal things. Everyone has those stories, right, from games where you do something and it's like, whoa, can you believe I did that? So, for game achievements purposes here, what's the highest amount of damage you've done in a single activation this year?
I think the most that I've gotten, I'm not sure if this counts, but I guess since these are things we made up ourselves, anything can count. um, I was messing around with Euripides, and like, he can create his rune etch pillars that will pulse out damage.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can always get like the tome trigger just to get multiple ones out. And my opponent was playing Pandora, and it was their first time against Euripides, so they're like, all right, I'm a bubble crew, let's bubble up. So I managed to like pulse out, I just used like all 3 actions to pulse out 6 pillars and like hit like his entire crew, and just getting all that damage off simple duels.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how much damage I pulsed out, but I think I killed like 1 or 2 models, and like everything else is kind of at half.
Ugh.
Are you counting like damage inflicted or the damage that the models could actually take? Like if you do 7 damage to an attack but a model has 2 health, is that 2 damage or 7?
Yeah, we're gonna count overkills.
Okay, so then I think the most I've done is 10 with two full stack Sonya Scorched Soul.
Oh.
So I mean, I don't have like any like super like a super huge damage spike story for this year, but I got a Witchling Thrall and Witchling Stalker out of that, so it was pretty impactful actually.
Nice.
Didn't you like flip a severe on a corpse candle to kill my Hamlin?
Yeah, I did. That wasn't very much damage. It was very satisfying, but it wasn't, a lot.
Was it a red Joker or was it just a severe? I feel like it was a red Joker.
I don't remember specifically. It was enough to get the job done.
Poor Hamlin.
What about you, Jim?
This actually happened just the other week. When Explorers came out, I wanted to try out all the different Explorers crews in their final form, and I started with ones I hadn't been able to try and play test. So I picked up Lord Justin Cooper. Played my buddy Nathan, and he was trying out Sommer, and he had Lenny in my range, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a shot at Lenny, because he's got Gremlin General, and he's kind of important to Sommer's crew. So I'm going to do my flips, and oh, what do you know? Here's a red Joker on damage. So, boom, 8 damage right away. Okay, that's Seamus level damage. Well, I'm going to reload, spending my focus as a bonus action with Cooper to take another shot with his gun that's normally once per activation. I hit, and I'm like on a triple negative, and I go, whatever, flip. Hey, look, another severe, a casual 15 damage.
Did you generate a lot of salt then?
Yes. Cooper is fine, by the way. Like, that was statistically unlikely. Please don't do anything to him. That poor man has lost so much already. He is already not as good at shooting as Seamus and not as mobile as Seamus. Please do not nerf him anymore. It's okay for him to have a big damage gun that goes once, maybe twice a turn.
He still doesn't count as a living model, right?
Correct. I mean, he's like basically a head on a robot body.
Well, so does he count as a construct?
But he's not construct either, is he?
No, he's not a construct. No, he is nothing. He's not living nor construct. He is something more.
I wonder if there's some kind of sinister backstory playing into that.
No, it's like that meme where they're like, what are you? Are you a man or a woman? I'm a hunter. Yeah, but what's in your pants? A gun.
Yeah. Well, I definitely cannot match 15 damage. That sounds pretty impressive, and I think it's a very even keeled opponent who can sit through that and not feel at least a little sting of annoyance. My thoughts go out to your opponent. So that I think has been a pretty good sequence of feats of strength, and that should conclude Festivus. So for those of you who have listened to the end, thank you very much. We play in one small corner here in Los Angeles, and of course Jim plays over on the East Coast and around the world on Vassal. But one of the reasons we're making this podcast is because we would like to be part of the larger Malifaux community. So if you've listened to this and you have any thoughts or opinions, if you have grievances of your own, particularly if they're about Jim or Colgan, please feel free to submit them. We have a Facebook. We have our own Discord channel. We have a website. We got some voicemails over our Anchor site, which is super cool because before we got those voicemails, I didn't even know that was possible. So we love feedback of any kind. You can also hunt us down on the forums. Jim and I are on it, and I think Colgan might have a dead account of some kind.
I lurk.
So yeah, just let us know how you think we're doing, what you think we could do better, if there's anything you'd like us to cover. We also have a PayPal and a Patreon, which will be in the show notes, so if you'd like to support the channel that way, that's super cool of you. Otherwise, that's all I have, and so I'm going to sign off by saying it's been a great year, and Jim and Colgan, it's been a great time doing this podcast with you guys. I look forward to 2021. Hopefully, the COVID situation improves and whatever. Please enjoy your winter holiday of choice, or none, and I will see you guys in 2021.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.